My friends, have you ever had that gut feeling that something wasn't quite right, but you couldn't put your finger on it? Maybe you brushed it off. Maybe you even told yourself you were overthinking. And yet, weeks or months later, that little feeling, it turned out to be the truth, screaming in a whisper. Micro disrespect is one of the most insidious red flags you can encounter because it's quiet. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And that's exactly why so many people miss it. We're conditioned to look out for the obvious, yelling, name-calling, explosive anger. But what about the subtle digs disguised as humor? The eye rolls when you speak passionately about something. The way they interrupt you mid-sentence or dismiss your ideas with a smirk. These aren't just personality quirks, they're messages. And they're saying something loud and clear: you don't matter as much as I do. It might start small, a sarcastic comment in front of your friends, a joke that targets your insecurities. But when you react, they say, relax, it was just a joke. They make you feel like you're too sensitive, like you can't take a little teasing. But here's the truth. When someone truly respects you, they don't weaponize humor at your expense. They don't poke at your self-worth for their entertainment. Micro disrespect is the red flag that slowly erodes your confidence because it happens over time, drop by drop. One day you look in the mirror and realize you're not as vibrant, not as confident, not as sure of yourself as you used to be. These small acts are not random, they are tests. Each one is measuring what you'll tolerate. And when you let them slide, you're teaching them how to treat you. People often say, well, they're good most of the time, or it's not that serious. But the most dangerous kind of disrespect is the kind that hides in plain sight. It doesn't blow up your world overnight. It chips away at it, piece by piece, until your boundaries are blurry and your self-respect is the price you're paying just to keep the peace. Let's be clear, respect is not just about big gestures. It's in the way someone looks at you when you're speaking. It's in whether they remember things that matter to you. It's in how they talk about you when you're not around. Micro disrespect is like emotional erosion. Left unchecked, it turns strong, self-assured people into anxious versions of themselves, constantly second-guessing what they say, how they act, or whether they're too much. You don't need someone to scream at you to know it's unhealthy. If you constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells or like your thoughts and feelings are being minimized, that's your signal. Listen to it. You don't need permission to walk away from something that feels wrong, even if you can't prove it on paper. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are recognizing something real. And the sooner you acknowledge it, the faster you protect yourself from the long-term cost of staying where you're not deeply respected. Inconsistency between words and actions is one of the clearest yet most often overlooked red flags in any connection, romantic, platonic, or professional. Because when someone tells you everything you want to hear, it's easy to get swept up in the hope, the potential, the fantasy of who they could be. But talk is cheap. Words are easy. Anyone can say the right things. It's following through that separates genuine character from performance. I care about you, but constantly prioritizes everything and everyone else over you. Pay attention. When they promise to call, to show up, to change, but keep falling short, that's not forgetfulness. That's not being bad at texting. That's inconsistency. And inconsistency over time is a form of emotional instability. It creates a relationship dynamic where you're always wondering where you stand, constantly filling in the blanks with excuses. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe I'm expecting too much. But deep down, you know the truth. If someone values you, they don't leave you confused. It's not just about showing up when it's convenient. It's about consistency when it's inconvenient, when they're tired, busy, or stressed, and still make the effort to honor their word. Anyone can be amazing for a few days or even a few weeks, but consistency is what builds trust. And inconsistency, it chips away at that trust day by day. It makes you question your worth, your judgment, and eventually yourself. And the most dangerous part is that inconsistent people often know exactly when to turn on the charm. When they sense you pulling away, they swoop back in with just enough attention to make you stay. They say what you've been aching to hear, but it's not change, it's strategy, a cycle. And every time you believe the words without requiring the action, you're reinforcing the pattern. If someone's behavior and words don't align, believe the behavior. That's the truth. That's who they are. People can get caught up in the hope of who someone could be if they just try but you're not in a relationship with their potential. You're in a relationship with their patterns, with their consistency or lack of it. You deserve someone whose actions reassure you more than their words ever could. Someone who doesn't just say, I'm here, but proves it day in, day out, especially when it's hard. Don't let charming words blind you to disappointing behavior. Pay attention to the gap between what they say and what they do, because that gap, that's where their true intentions live. And if you have to constantly translate mixed signals, then the message is already clear. A person who avoids accountability cannot grow, because growth starts with self-awareness. If someone is constantly pointing fingers and never looking in the mirror, it means they're not learning from their experiences. They're running from them. And here's why that's dangerous. When things eventually go wrong between you and them, and they won't look at what they could have done differently. They'll look at you. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're the reason things are tense. You're the reason they shut down. You're the one who's too much or too sensitive or always starting something. It's emotional deflection and it's manipulative. This kind of person is skilled at rewriting history to protect their ego. They will twist facts to make themselves look better and make you question your own memory. And if you're not grounded, if you're someone who's empathetic or quick to take responsibility yourself, you might find yourself apologizing for things that aren't yours to own. That's how people end up trapped in emotionally imbalanced dynamics, where one person keeps making mistakes and the other keeps making excuses for them. People who don't take accountability also struggle to offer genuine apologies. They might say, I'm sorry you feel that way, instead of, I'm sorry I did that. Their version of an apology centers around escaping blame, not repairing trust. That's not a real apology. That's image management. And without accountability, there can be no trust, no safety, no foundation. Because conflict is inevitable in any relationship, what matters is not whether it happens, but how it's handled. Someone who owns their mistakes and actively works to improve is someone you can build with. But someone who denies, deflects, or gaslights their way out of responsibility, that's someone you'll constantly be picking up the emotional pieces after. You don't need perfection from someone, you need ownership. You need someone who, when they mess up, and they will, can look you in the eye and say, that was on me. That kind of humility is rare, but it's essential, because a relationship without accountability is like a house with no foundation. It might look fine on the outside, but the minute there's pressure, it crumbles. And when it does, they won't be the one cleaning up the mess, you will. Low effort communication is one of those red flags that people often excuse until it slowly eats away at their sense of value. At first, it can feel like a minor thing. They reply late. They give one-word answers. They stop asking you questions. They no longer initiate conversations. And when they do respond, it feels obligatory, not enthusiastic. You tell yourself they're just busy or not a phone person, but the truth is, consistent, low-effort communication speaks volumes. And what it usually says is, you are not a priority. We live in a world where everyone is busy, but being busy has never stopped someone who really wants to connect. It takes 5 seconds to send a quick message that says, thinking of you. It takes 0 effort to let someone know you're tied up, but you'll get back to them later. So when someone regularly disappears, leaves you on red, or takes hours or days to respond without explanation, that's not just forgetfulness, that's a pattern. And patterns reveal intentions. The danger here is subtle. You may start to rationalize the disconnect. You'll tell yourself you don't want to seem needy or high maintenance. You'll lower your expectations to match their lack of effort. But little by little, you lose the ability to ask for what you need. You shrink your voice to avoid rocking the boat. You start accepting breadcrumbs while calling it connection. And that's not okay. Healthy communication doesn't mean someone has to be glued to their phone or constantly texting. It means they make you feel seen, even in small ways. It means they engage with intention. They don't just answer questions. You feel like they want to talk to you. They ask about your day. They follow up on things you told them. They actually listen, not just hear. That's the difference between presence and politeness. When someone truly values you, they show up. Not just when they're in the mood, not just when it's convenient, but consistently. Low effort communication isn't about a busy schedule. It's about low investment. And it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that love or interest should feel like uncertainty, like a game you have to win. But real connection isn't a guessing game. You shouldn't be decoding texts or analyzing silence to figure out where you stand. You deserve someone who matches your energy, who reciprocates your effort, who makes you feel wanted without needing to chase for it. Because communication is not just a tool, it's a mirror. It reflects how someone feels about you, how much space they're willing to make in their world for you. If you always feel like you're initiating, like you're carrying the conversation, or like they're barely present, believe it. Don't wait around, hoping they'll magically wake up and realize your worth. Someone who sees your value will show it, not just when it's easy, but especially when it counts. Isolation doesn't always happen in obvious, dramatic ways. Sometimes it creeps in slowly, disguised as love, concern, or just wanting to spend more time together. At first, it might feel flattering. They want you all to themselves. They don't like how your friends treat you. They think your family is too involved. They start planting seeds. Why do you even hang out with them? I just don't think they really understand you. I feel like they're a bad influence. It sounds like care, but the goal isn't to protect you, it's to separate you. What makes this red flag especially dangerous is how subtle and calculated it can be. It doesn't usually start with full-blown control. It starts with a preference, then a pattern, then a rule. Over time, you find yourself canceling plans with people you used to be close with. You stop sharing good news with your support system because you know it'll cause tension. Maybe you're told you're different now when you talk about your goals, or shamed for being too ambitious or too independent. They slowly convince you that the only person who really gets you is them. Someone who truly loves you won't isolate you from the people and passions that bring you life. They'll encourage you to stay connected. They'll want you to thrive, not shrink. But someone who wants control will work to cut off your lifelines piece by piece until you're completely dependent on them for validation, support, and identity. This red flag often gets overlooked because it can feel so wrapped up in romance. They might say things like, "I just miss you when you're gone," or "I get anxious when I don't know where you are." And it sounds sweet until it turns into guilt tripping every time you step outside the relationship, until your world becomes smaller and your choices are no longer truly your own. You start feeling disconnected from the version of you that once felt strong and free. You second guess your decisions. You keep secrets, not because you want to, but because it's easier than explaining them. That's not love. That's a form of emotional captivity. And it doesn't just affect your social life. It rewires your self-worth, because when someone isolates you, they are cutting you off from mirrors, the kind of mirrors that remind you who you are outside of them. The people in your life who uplift you, who challenge you, who knew you before this person came along, those people matter. And if someone is trying to erase that history, it's not about connection, it's about control. Don't ignore it just because it doesn't look like the classic signs of abuse. Sometimes the most dangerous cages are built with compliments and care. Pay attention to anyone who tries to pull you away from everything and everyone that makes you feel most you, because someone who truly loves you will never need to isolate you to keep you. The biggest red flag isn't something someone says or does, it's how you feel around them. You can't always explain it. There's no single event you can point to, but deep down, you know something's off. You feel drained instead of energized. You leave interactions with them feeling anxious, confused, or just smaller. That's not chemistry, that's not love. That's your intuition signaling that something isn't right. Relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or even professional, shouldn't feel like emotional roller coasters. They shouldn't leave you constantly questioning yourself or wondering where you stand. When you're with someone who's genuinely good for you, you feel more grounded, more confident, more like yourself. But when you're with someone who's subtly toxic or emotionally unsafe, the opposite happens. You feel like you have to shrink to keep the peace. You overanalyze every text, every conversation, every shift in tone. You start walking on eggshells, trying not to say the wrong thing because you've been made to feel like your feelings are too much or your needs are inconvenient. This kind of emotional drain doesn't always come from overt mistreatment. Sometimes it comes from inconsistency, hot and cold behavior, gaslighting, or just never feeling fully seen or understood. Over time, it chips away at your sense of safety and self-worth. You start blaming yourself for things that aren't your fault. You start apologizing for your emotions. You start adapting to their moods, their needs, their silence, while your own needs slowly disappear from the equation. And here's the part that's hard to hear. Just because there are moments of connection, of laughter, of passion, that doesn't mean it's healthy. A few highs don't make up for constant emotional lows. That's not love. That's emotional volatility. And emotional volatility isn't romantic. It's exhausting. Your energy doesn't lie. It knows before your mind is ready to admit it. It tells you when you're safe and when you're not. But too often, people ignore that feeling because they want it to work. They keep holding on, thinking things will change. They cling to the good moments and downplay the bad ones. But if you consistently feel worse after spending time with someone, that's not something to explain away. That's a red flag, waving in silence. The people who are right for you won't leave you emotionally depleted. They won't make you question your worth. They will make you feel more alive, not less. More empowered, not more insecure. So listen to your body. Listen to your nervous system. How do you feel when you're around them? Calm or tense? Seen or invisible? Energized or exhausted? The answer to those questions is the truth. And the truth is, when someone drains you more than they fill you up, it's time to walk away. You don't need a reason that makes sense to anyone else. The way you feel is enough. Always. The most dangerous red flags are never the loud ones. They're the quiet ones we excuse, minimize, or ignore because we don't want them to be real. Micro disrespect, inconsistency, lack of accountability, low effort communication, subtle isolation, and emotional exhaustion. None of these usually show up all at once. They arrive in small doses, dressed in charm, wrapped in temporary affection. But over time, they strip away your confidence, your clarity, and your peace. Best isn't about being perfect or expecting perfection. It's about learning to trust yourself, to recognize when something feels off and believe that feeling. Because red flags don't become easier to deal with the longer you ignore them. They become harder to walk away from. The longer you stay, the more you justify. The more you justify, the more you lose touch with the version of you who knew what you deserved in the first place. Love is not supposed to feel like confusion, anxiety, or imbalance. It's not supposed to feel like convincing someone of your worth. Real connection, safe, healthy, meaningful connection, feels steady. It feels secure. It brings out more of who you are, not less. And if someone consistently leaves you feeling small, unseen, or emotionally unsafe, that's not your person. That's your signal to walk away. You don't need more time, more excuses, or more hope that they'll change. You need truth. And the truth is, your peace, your worth, your boundaries, they are not up for negotiation. So pay attention, not just to what they say, but how they make you feel. The most overlooked red flags are the ones that steal your joy in silence. Don't wait for them to become louder. Respect the whisper and choose yourself every single time.